Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel Stoic Mindset Mastery. Today's conversation is one that often comes too late for many men, not because they weren't trying, but because they weren't taught how to recognize the subtle shifts that come long before a relationship fully unravels. Cheating, emotional or physical, rarely begins with a single decision or impulsive mistake. More often, it starts with something far less obvious. A growing emotional distance, subtle behavioral changes, and quiet shifts in priority. These changes are easy to miss if you're not paying close attention. This conversation isn't rooted in suspicion or blame. It's rooted in awareness, emotional clarity, the kind of awareness that helps you notice when something isn't quite right. Not to control someone else, but to honor your own peace and emotional safety. Because when a woman begins to pull away emotionally, the story her actions tell often differs from the one her words present. Today, we're going to explore 4 key phrases that can sometimes reveal deeper emotional currents beneath the surface. These aren't universal truths, but they're common patterns. And recognizing them might help you make decisions from a place of strength rather than confusion. Let's begin. 1. He's just a friend. This is one of the most commonly overlooked red flags. Not because the words themselves are suspicious, but because of the context they often come wrapped in. Sometimes it starts innocently enough. A name that comes up more frequently. A laugh that sounds a little too intimate. A story where the same person seems to show up over and over again. You notice these things not because you're insecure, but because your instincts are paying attention. She tells you not to worry. Maybe you want to believe her. Maybe you do believe her because you trust her. But sometimes, beneath those 5 simple words is something deeper. Emotional energy being invested elsewhere. You might hear phrases meant to ease concern. He's like a brother to me. He's already in a relationship. Or, we've been friends forever. Those explanations can be completely true, but the intensity behind the defense often says more than the words themselves. You start noticing patterns. She brings him up even when she doesn't need to. She lights up when he texts. Maybe she encourages you to meet him, hoping your discomfort will fade, but it doesn't. Not because you're jealous, but because you sense something unspoken. What matters isn't the label she gives the relationship, but how she responds when you express discomfort. A partner who values the relationship will listen, empathize, and prioritize your emotional safety. She won't get angry, dismissive, or defensive. That reaction often reveals more than the friendship itself. Emotional boundaries are often harder to define than physical ones, but that doesn't make them less real. Emotional intimacy can drift quietly, one message at a time, one laugh at a text, one private detail shared with someone who isn't you. And sometimes, without even realizing it, she begins to confide in him more than you. That's not just friendship. That's a shift in emotional loyalty. And while it might not be intentional at first, if she refuses to acknowledge how it affects you, that matters. The truth is, emotional connections like these often evolve into more once a relationship ends. We see it all the time. What was once just a friend quietly becomes something more. And when that happens, it's rarely a surprise. It's the result of a door that was never fully closed. You don't compete with a friend. You compete with someone she hasn't been honest about. And if her emotional energy is consistently being invested somewhere else, if she defends another connection more fiercely than she defends your concerns, then you're not imagining the shift. You're living in it. A relationship built on trust isn't measured by how often someone tells you not to worry. It's measured by how willing they are to protect what matters to you, especially when you're not around. 2. Gaslighting and deflecting accountability. There are moments in a relationship when your gut tells you something's off. Pause in her voice. A detail that doesn't quite line up. A subtle change in how she shows up. So you bring it up not as an accusation but as a concern. But instead of reassurance, you're met with deflection. Suddenly, the conversation isn't about your concern. It's about your insecurity. You're being too sensitive. Overthinking. Now you're on trial for noticing something real. This isn't just miscommunication. It's a deflection technique. One that can make you question your instincts and even your own reality. That's the quiet nature of gaslighting. It doesn't always come in anger. Sometimes it comes with a sigh and a dismissal. But the result is the same. You walk away more confused than when you started. And in some cases, it escalates. You express discomfort, and somehow the blame is turned back on you. Why would you even think that unless you're hiding something? That's not resolution, that's projection. And it's designed to throw you off balance. A healthy partner doesn't punish you for noticing. They don't twist your questions into accusations. They listen. They reflect. They take responsibility when it's needed. You deserve a relationship where your intuition is honored, not invalidated. Where your concerns aren't turned against you, but met with empathy and openness. When accountability disappears, so does trust. And without trust, emotional safety becomes impossible. You begin to second-guess yourself, not because you're wrong, but because she's become skilled at subtly making you feel as if you are. Then the narratives start to shift. One day, it's a girls' only night out. The next, someone casually mentions a guy was there. You ask about it, and she waves it off. You're reading too much into it, but something in you hesitates. Your gut speaks in a language that logic can't always decode, but it's rarely mistaken. The truth often lives in the small contradictions. They may not be dramatic, but they're significant. Over time, they erode your trust, not just in her, but in your own perception. You begin to quiet your intuition in favor of her carefully crafted explanations. But you need to remember, your instincts are not your enemy. When something feels off, it usually is. You don't need every piece of the puzzle to trust yourself. There's a reason you felt the need to ask. There's a reason the answers didn't sit right. Your peace should never be chipped away by half-truths or emotional sleight of hand. There's quiet strength in standing firm in what you sense to be true, even when someone else is trying to rewrite the story. As the saying goes, if your spirit is unsettled, pay attention. Clarity begins the moment you stop doubting yourself. I need space. Sounds gentle, even thoughtful, but often, it's not the beginning of healing. It's the beginning of the end. When someone says they need space, it rarely comes without signs. The words may be calm, but the shift started long before. More often than not, that space isn't being created, it's already being filled. This phrase has become one of the most misunderstood exit strategies in modern relationships. Presents as a pause, a reset, a moment of personal growth. But in truth, it's often a carefully chosen way to detach while keeping you close enough. Just in case. Watch her behavior. The texts slow down. The tone cools. Phone calls that once felt endless now feel obligatory. Physical closeness fades, not from stress, but from disinterest. New people start to appear more frequently. A certain name comes up again and again. He's just a friend, she says, but something in you knows better. The connection you once had now feels hollow, transactional. This is where many men stumble. They chase. They plead. They try to prove their worth holding on to. But chasing someone who's already walking away only widens the distance. She isn't asking for space to repair the relationship. She's asking to experience life without you, while keeping the safety net in place. And in that silence, she watches how you respond. The more you pursue, the less she respects your center. The strongest response? Let her have the space. Not from anger, but from self-respect. Let her actions speak. If she uses that space to drift closer to someone else, the truth was never in the words she gave you. It was in the distance she created. A grounded man who honors himself isn't passive. He's powerful. Eventually, she may come to realize that the silence she requested became the silence where your presence disappeared. And in that absence, she'll see what she let go of. Not just a man who cared, but a man who knew when to stop offering himself to someone who already moved on. You deserve someone better. The final signal. Sometimes, breakups don't arrive with shouting or drama. Sometimes they come cloaked in softness. A look of calm, a touch of regret, and a sentence that sounds like a compliment. You deserve better. It lands gently. It almost feels like grace. But beneath the words is a quieter truth. I've already left. Please don't make this harder. She may still be there in form, but emotionally, she's long gone. The conversations shrink. The warmth disappears. Her touch no longer carries intention. It becomes routine. What you're hearing isn't vulnerability. It's a closing statement. This phrase gives her the high ground. Sounds noble, as if she's offering you freedom. But in reality, she's trying to exit quietly, without guilt. She avoids the confrontation. She doesn't say, I've lost interest, or I've found someone else. Instead, she hands you a polished line that sounds like compassion, when really, it's about self-preservation. And it works, because it flips the emotional script. Suddenly, you're not being left, you're being released. And if you're still hoping, still trying, you may take the bait. You may think it's salvageable, that with a little effort, things will return to how they were. But here's the truth. When a woman says, you deserve better, she's not confused. She's already rehearsed this moment. She's already decided. trying to fix it from there only hands her more control over a decision she's already made. You don't need to beg for clarity or fight for what's fading. Sometimes, the most dignified move is to accept the truth she's dressing up and walk away with your self-respect intact. Because in the end, the love you want won't come with half-truths, detachment, or quiet exits disguised as kindness. It will show up fully, speak clearly, and most importantly, stay. Sometimes, she's not looking for solutions. She's looking for closure without the drama, without the endless back and forth. Trying to win her back at this point doesn't show strength. More often, it's just a way to delay what's already unfolding, a quiet unraveling. And in that delay, something deeper erodes, your self-respect. The hardest, yet most powerful thing you can do in moments like these is to let her go, gracefully. No bargaining, no pleading, no need to collect every detail to make sense of it. Because if you listen closely, the truth is already there, in the quiet space between her words. She's no longer emotionally present. And in her own way, she's hoping you'll make the ending easier for both of you. But accepting that doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've chosen dignity. It means you understand that someone who genuinely values you doesn't leave you with ambiguity and a handful of phrases that sound like care, but feel like retreat. Real commitment shows up in the willingness to stay and work through discomfort, not in disappearing behind polite exits. There's a quote that holds weight here. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. So when she says, "You deserve better," hear it not as a selfless gesture, but as a gentle request to be released from a role she no longer wants to carry. And the sooner you recognize that, the sooner you can stop holding on to someone who has already emotionally stepped away. Healing doesn't begin with chasing closure. It begins with choosing clarity. And clarity arrives the moment you stop rewriting their words and start listening to their truth. Because love, real love, doesn't exit with rehearsed lines. It either stays and grows or it leaves with honesty. Anything else is just a softened goodbye. Don't settle for halfway love. Cheating, whether physical or emotional, is rarely an accident. It's often a slow drift, a buildup of unmet needs, unspoken words, and shifting priorities. And many times, it begins with small, seemingly harmless phrases. "He's just a friend." "You're being insecure." "I need space." "You deserve someone better." These aren't just words. They're signs, indicators that something beneath the surface is changing. When emotional connection fades, language changes. Reassurances feel forced, presence becomes sparse, and her words stop aligning with her actions. She might not say it outright, but she's telling you everything you need to know, if you're willing to listen beyond the surface. For many men, this is where the real pain begins. Not just in the betrayal itself, but in realizing they overlooked what their gut was trying to tell them. They gave more chances, silenced their intuition, and hoped love alone would bring things back. But emotional disconnection rarely fixes itself. Once respect fades and emotional space is occupied elsewhere, the relationship shifts into something unrecognizable. This isn't about blame. It's not about turning love into suspicion. It's about learning to pay attention, not just to what's said, but to what's avoided. When a woman is still emotionally invested, you'll see it in her effort, her communication, and her desire to protect what you've built. But when her words start creating distance instead of connection, when clarity is replaced by vague reassurances, it's often a sign she's already begun letting go. And here's the truth. You're not responsible for convincing someone to stay. You're not meant to chase love, to beg for loyalty, or to decipher mixed signals. Your responsibility is to yourself, to observe, reflect, and protect your emotional well-being. Holding on to someone who's already halfway out only prolongs the pain and delays the healing. A man who knows his worth doesn't chase inconsistent affection. He doesn't stay in limbo. He recognizes when love is no longer being returned, and he lets go with quiet strength, not bitterness. So ask yourself honestly, are you accepting less than what you truly deserve? Are you hoping her words mean something they no longer do? And if so, are you ready to choose peace and self-respect over confusion? I'd love to hear your story. Have you encountered these moments, these subtle shifts in language or energy? How did you respond? And what did the experience teach you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your insight could help someone else navigating the same storm. And if this video brought you clarity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more conversations on emotional awareness, relationships, and becoming the kind of man who doesn't chase, because he knows his value. Until next time, care for your mind, protect your heart, and always lead with quiet strength.